when we're working with clients and getting them to be much more narrow in their focus, one of their biggest fears is, well, that we don't want to say no to business. And it's by not saying no, we're not allowing ourselves to say yes in a really big way and show up with outbound is just one of those things that the thing that I can guarantee in the future is that it will take more activities to get a hold of someone and then the contact rates are going to go down. So fewer people are going to pick up the phone, email response rates are going to be lower. So what we're going to dig into today is, if you're trying to boil the ocean with your outbound approach and you're trying to be everything for all industries, all personas, anyone that could possibly participate in a deal, you're really missing the mark in a huge way and you're requiring your reps to do way too much. Before we get to that, my name's Jason. I'm host of Outbound Squad. We're all about helping you turn complete strangers into paying customers. So if you have a team of reps or you are a rep, you're being tasked with going outbound into your accounts, and maybe there's multiple industry verticals that you sell into. There's multiple products, multiple personas, et cetera. We're going to talk about how to simplify that. And it's one of the things that we've helped companies like Shopify, Zoom, Rippling, Gong, and a ton of other companies with. So today, I think this idea really stemmed from something I was taught in sales around the martini glass shaped pipeline. And it was this idea that we don't want our pipeline to look like a pipeline. We really want it to look more like a martini glass. And the core idea there is that we're going to shrink the top of our funnel. And it's more about going really deep on fewer opportunities where the likelihood of a response is higher and the likelihood of winning a deal, a big deal especially, is higher because they're just so much of a better fit. And what that requires us to do is say no. In a really big way, it requires us from an outbound standpoint to say no to most of our accounts. So without further ado, let's dig in with Clara Johnson on what this looks like and how to apply it.
Jason, you and I have had conversations around some of your hot takes from an outbound perspective when it comes to prospecting. And recently, I think it was last week, we talked about intent data and how these very expensive softwares are placed in the hands of sales reps and they're getting fed all of this intent data. Plus, they have triggers set up on Sales Nav against their account list. Plus, maybe they have insights through Zoom info that are surfacing, trigger events. And I know that that can be very saturating sitting in the seat of a seller. It's like, where do I even start? Like, I have all this intent data. Is that my source of truth? I have all these pings on LinkedIn telling me that, they're hiring a bunch of people. Is that my source of truth? How would you recommend that reps go about understanding how to really shrink their accounts into that martini funnel, go super narrow and super deep with all of the noise that comes with technology and tech stacks today?
So my hot take on intent data is it's a waste of money. So like intent data should not be used to inform your outbound approach. And the reason for that is, I mean, dude, I can't tell you how many senior sales leaders I've talked to in the last 2 or 3 months that are not renewing with the big intent data provider that we won't mention by name that everyone knows. It's like, dude, okay, cool. Someone at Microsoft is looking for a sales engagement platform. Awesome. What do I do with that information? I don't know who it is. This account is surging though. No, it's showing high intent. What the hell do I
It's
do with
green.
that?
Go after it.
It's green. Go after this account. So where I really started to really kind of see this problem was with an enterprise BDR team that was selling into enterprise content management. So they had a mid-market team, but they had an enterprise team that was also selling into Fortune 500. And they weren't seeing any success with the intent data or any of that kind of stuff. And like what they sell is, it's a really like very complex solution that can be sold into a lot of different industries. So for example, the value prop really is you have multiple databases of customer information, let's say. Let's say that you're selling to a hospital clinic. Being able to pull in their medical records, their online history, their interactions with people on our team, et cetera. Being able to pull all of that into one place will help them improve the customer experience. Well, how a hospital does that versus how, Nordstrom would use that information is completely different. And those are two very completely different industries. And although the solution works very similar, the language is very different and the people that you talk to are very different. So the team was really struggling to book enterprise meetings. They had 11 industry verticals and they had 30 plus plays.
Wow. Wow. I wouldn't even know where to start, like I just said.
Yeah. It's very similar to a client that we just started working with.
Yes, it is.
So um, that's a lot of complexity for any seasoned, experienced seller. That's a lot of complexity. You can't wrap your head around 30 different types of conversations I should have this week. So what we did is we said, hey, we're only going to reach out to these three verticals, and we're really going to narrow it down by persona. And the best way to do this is to work with your RevOps team and just use data to inform this decision. I want to look at where do we win the most? So where are our win rates the highest? Where are deal cycles the shortest? Where are ACVs the highest? Where do we get the most repeat business? You could also look. A part of this exercise might be looking at your TAM and seeing where like the growth opportunities are. But you need to pull this and make that decision with data. So that's the industry. The second thing that I would look at is the personas. So what we started to do was we looked at, okay, yeah, there's 4 or 5 different buyers. And when people tell me that one of their buyers is IT and they don't sell an IT solution, I'm like, we're not going to ever outbound to an IT person. Like, these are people that get brought in after the fact to make sure that it technically will work with their systems. Like, that's not where you want to start the sales conversation. So really, in most cases, there's like 2, maybe 3 buyer types at these companies. So things that you can look for there is reverse engineer how deals come together. Like, take a look at 10 deals that were closed this year. It's November at the time of recording this. Take a look at 10 deals that were closed, and who were the first meetings with? Who are the champions in those deals? Who are the economic buyers? Like, just follow the same golden path each time. So refine the personas, and then that's then where you can start to think about the triggers. So once we've really narrowed down those accounts, 3 industries instead of 11, 2 personas instead of 5. Now I'm going to say, hey, I have 20 accounts left to choose with. What are the other common triggers that create a need for our solution? So one of the cybersecurity companies that we worked with, for example, one of their triggers was them opening up new manufacturing plants, and it was the IT security in those manufacturing plants. Well, that's a great trigger, right? Let's look and see what accounts might have had activity like that in the last 6 or 12 months. Hiring might be another trigger. Whatever it is, like, determine your 3 to 5 triggers, and then you can narrow even more to see like what's relevant right now. But we had such good results, like, very, very quickly. Within like 6 to 9 months, their SDR team generated the most amount of pipeline in a single month ever. It was a 170% increase, 3.12 mil to 8.43 mil.
Wow.
They closed a shit ton of deals from that. The reps were booking a ton more meetings. And it was all just because they decided to say no to 8 industry verticals and no to 3 different personas. So that's like the big, big takeaway here is
How
shrinking down the top of funnel and going super deep.
how do you get buy-in? Because this happens through the leadership team, right? How do you
Yeah.
get buy-in from the leaders to shrink down the verticals and the industries that we are asking their sales teams to go after and then narrow in the focus to personas? I know I've had conversations with sales leaders and they're like, no, no, we got to go after everything. We win some here, but it's very nuanced here. So how do you overcome some of that hesitation that they think about when it's like, well, what if we miss out on revenue if we shrink down the size of who we go after?
Yeah. I think there's, just like with everything in sales, there's, people buy based on emotion and justify with logic is kind of the old saying, right? So, yeah, you have to, hey, yeah, I totally hear where you're coming from. Like, we are going to say no to certain things, and short term, we could leave a little bit of revenue on the table. That might be hard to sit with. But the thing you have to think about is a rep in a given week only has so many like mental calories that they can exert on outbound. If it's an account executive, it's maybe an hour or 2 per day. So what do you want them spending that time on? Do you want them to spend time on an opportunity that has a 20% chance of landing a meeting and creating an opportunity, or a 3% chance?
Mm-hmm.
And then the data, show them the data. The data doesn't lie with this. Show them the RevOps report of the win rates by industry, the TAM by industry, the so it's uh, win rate, deal size, and then sales cycle length. How long
Mm-hmm.
it takes to close a deal. Like, the data doesn't lie.
we did a client delivery back in the spring for a cybersecurity company, and their CMO was aligned to our onboarding process.
Yeah.
And he came to the table and he was like, I already know the three personas that I want to go after because I've ran a bunch of reports and I looked at all the data, and these two personas we win with the most, and this third persona came into X amount of deals last year, but we're not that's not an entry point for us, but they're influenced and they impact the deal.
Yep.
So we want to create outbound messaging for that one and see if we can do it as an entry point. And I was like, this is the type of data reverse engineering that we need to then go execute and see if we can build pipeline in the personas we know that work, but the new persona that may be more interested in taking meetings and exploring.
Yep. And I was seeing if I have it handy because he shared some really cool things with us. I don't think I have the data handy, but there was a massive increase in the amount of meetings that they landed with director plus personas in those industry verticals. It's just because it's a sweet spot. Like the other part that we haven't talked about yet is social proof. In our study of 85 million cold emails with Gong, that's fresh off the presses, 3 or 4 months old, the use of social proof in emails increases the reply rates by 40+%. It's the same thing in cold email, cold calls. It's the same thing sharing customer stories in the sales process. If you work with retail companies and you say we work with Nordstrom, that's pretty freaking powerful, right? If you are reaching out to retail companies and you don't have a customer like a Nordstrom and you're working with, I don't know, what other brand you work with. I was going to say Apple, but Apple has a pretty big retail presence. You work with shit. I don't even know. Make up something.
You're asking for a retail company?
A non-retail company. You work with a bank. So
Okay.
you work
A
with US Bank or a gym. It's like, okay, cool. Like I don't really see like the solution is exactly the same, but the language and like it's so important for people to feel like you understand their industry and who they are as a buyer. So you have to really be thinking about that stuff. Like, how will I communicate the story around the problem and the social proof if we don't have a lot of really strong clients in this industry vertical? Or for whatever reason, it's harder to buy our solution, or there's less of a need of it. You know what I mean? So that's just like all of that stuff really adds up.
The best thing I think you can do as a sales rep, whether you're BDR or AE, even a solution engineer, is to have a backlog of like 2 to 3 customer stories that could be applicable to different use cases or that have like results that you think that these teams will want, and just have them memorized. They're your go-to. It was one of the best things that I did as a seller was memorize customer stories, 3 of them
Yep.
that I could use in different angles when I was getting objections or different verticals or personas that I was selling to. It will pay off.